Okay. We do it at the same time. Ready? Welcome to dokomylove. I am here with
VERENA.
Let's talk about love dating in Japan. Today I have my wonderful friend VERENA, and we are going to talk about her experiences with love and dating in Japan, and specifically dating with Japanese people.
Yeah.
That was a very big sigh. Good or bad? Let's find out. So, have you dated a Japanese guy before?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I have. I've lived here in Yokohama for...
Start over.
Okay.
So, quickly tell me, how long have you been in Japan? How many times have you been in Japan? And just overall summary. Less than a minute.
Okay, so this is my second time in Japan. The first time was when I lived in Kyoto for 9 months, and back then I didn't have any internet on my phone, so I didn't really feel like I knew how to even meet Japanese people, whether it was for dating or not. So this time around, I live in Yokohama. I do have internet on my phone, and I feel like I also have more experience because I'm a bit older, so more confidence. No, but like also more confidence in like going out and meet people. And so I have been using apps to find people and to talk to people on date, and then it's also been like people who have approached me on the street doing so-called Nampa.
Pick up.
Yeah, basically. And there's good and bad Nampa, as you and I have talked about previously.
That's right. So, I guess to kick things off, do you want to talk about how many Japanese guys you've dated?
I would have to think a little bit on that, because I have dated a few guys, but when I say date, I mean like I've been on dates with Japanese guys, not in the sense of like, oh, we've been dating for a long time. I've been on many first dates.
You go and get coffee, or you go to a restaurant, or
exactly
something. Yeah.
And then I'm not sure if I'm the perfect person to talk about dating in Japan, because I am pretty unlucky, I feel, with love in general, no matter what country. But I'm often the type that
sad music plays now.
They ask you how you are, you're supposed to have to say that you're fine, and you're not really fine.
But, no, but I am someone who still tries. You know, hope is the last thing that dies. And so I do like try to be open, and I go on, I meet people because I'm like, okay, maybe they are cool in person. And I would say like every time is still an experience, and even though you may not like fall for the person you may become friends, or just that doesn't happen too often though. Usually like you go on a date, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But yeah, let's see, I've been at least like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5,
10 max.
Maybe like at least 5, and so on. At least 5, okay. Probably more.
What about relationships? Have you had a relationship with a Japanese guy before?
I feel like I've had a half relationship. I'm not really sure what to call it.
What's a half relationship?
Where you kind of, I met this person, like we went on several dates, and so we were kind of going out for a couple of weeks, like the span of 2 months or so, but then he just moved to South Japan, and so I was like, what was that about? Like, why would you even start dating me? Because it felt like I had taken it seriously, but he didn't really.
Had he known he was moving to South Japan before you guys have been dating, or?
I think like this. He was fresh out of university, or like when we were to start dating, it was that he was taking his final exams, and he told me that he already had found a job, but
he didn't tell you where.
He didn't tell me where. I just assumed it would be in the area, and then later on when he told me like, oh yeah, I'm moving to South Japan, I talked to my friend, and actually a lot of companies, they have different places, places in Japan where you can work. So, and you don't really know where you end up working until like a week before you start. So I think that he probably knew there was a high possibility that he would be sent somewhere else in Tokyo or Yokohama. He just didn't tell me that, and then maybe he found out, oh, I'm going to South Japan, like a week before starting work. So, but it's still a bit crappy, I think. At the very least, you should tell someone that there is a possibility that you will be moving far away.
Of course.
Yeah. Otherwise, like, I mean, if you just want something casual, that's fine, but just be clear about it from the start,
Yeah.
I think.
Clear about your intentions.
Yeah, so that's why I don't know what that was, to be honest.
So you mentioned before that you've experienced Nampa, or pickup, where guys come and approach you, whether that's on the streets or at a bar or wherever. What has that experience been like?
Mixed. I personally think it's really cool when people approach and do Nampa in a way that's respectful. In Sweden, you don't really do a lot of Nampa. Of course, in the bar, maybe you start talking to someone, but I've never had anyone just walk up to me in the street and start like hitting on me. That's a really new experience, and I remember like the good experience was when I was in Shibuya, and it was during the day. I was in front of a restaurant waiting for a friend, and then this guy approached me, and at first I thought he was working for the restaurant, kind of like, hey, what are you doing here? Are you hungry? We have this menu. But he started talking about me, and I was like, that's a weird like way of doing business, until it kind of clicked for me. Oh, he's flirting. And yeah. And he was like, but also I think that's almost a good thing, because I didn't feel threatened. I just felt like, oh, this is a friendly person. And then when he asked me if I wanted to like maybe get a drink sometime or like go to a cafe, I felt like that's cool, because this is during the day. He's being respectful. He seems genuinely interested in me, and I actually agreed going on a date with this guy.
Wasn't being a creep.
No, he was actually he looked respectful. He seemed really cool, and I mean, we did go on a date. I wasn't. It really. In the end, I didn't continue dating him, but it wasn't because he was a bad person. It was just that I didn't feel that connection. But I'm still glad I went out with him, and he's a cool guy, I think. That's a good example of how to do Nampa.
Yeah, and in that case, you have the experience of just meeting someone new.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't work out for dating, it might work out for a friendship.
Yeah.
Or, you just meet someone one or two times and you just never see him again, but it's just the experience, right?
Yeah, because it's not like you can decide if you like the person or not based on like a 2-minute conversation.
Right.
So
And the whole reason why a guy goes up and talks to you in the first place is because they're interested in how you look. And that in itself is a compliment, you know? It's like they think you're physically attractive and they want to get to know you, who you are.
I think that also, I mean, I've also done Nampa myself, if I'm gonna be quite honest. And that's unusual in Japan, at least. I think it's unusual in any country, honestly, that the girl takes the first step, which I think is really sad. But going back to the Nampa, I've also been approached in ways where I wasn't really happy and I didn't feel comfortable with the situation. Like, for example, if it's like, and this happens quite often, that if it's 11 p.m. or 12 p.m., like, usually group of 2 businessmen.
11 p.m., 12 a.m.
Yeah. Wait, what? Yeah. Okay, yeah. 12. No,
Midnight.
sorry. Yeah, exactly.
Midnight?
Yeah, midnight. Basically, during the night when like a lot of people, out there, a lot of people who are drunk, and there was, for example, it's usually like 2 businessmen. They come in group that way, or in a duo, and they will try to get you to go to karaoke, which sometimes can be code for like, and this one time especially, I was with my friends, and this one business guy just kind of stands in front of me, blocks away, like, stop, and like really obnoxiously, and kind of was, in his half bad English. And I mean, I think it's cool when people try to speak English and just they make an effort that way, but it felt more like kind of slurred and just kind of like wanting to play with us and let's go somewhere and let's have fun. And it was kind of obvious what his intentions were. I don't think he was looking for a date, so to speak. And if you're a girl who's into that, I mean, more power to you, but it's not for me. And also, especially if you're a woman and it's late and it's someone who is who's drunk, it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable, and that it's kind of unpredictable. And I also had, like, when I went to Shiba during the day, a man who was much older than me kind of asked me, like, oh, let's go to a cafe. And I lied and said, oh, I have a boyfriend. And he was like, oh, well, is he Japanese? You should try Japanese, let's go. And I was like, how dare you disrespect my imaginative boyfriend? Yeah. No, that's not very nice either. Where it's like, it's clear I've already said no and they still persist. So that's also a bad kind of nampa.
So, be respectful. Know when they say no. Or sorry, stop when they say no.
Yeah.
And it's a skill. Like you have to know just how to talk to people. Like how to connect with someone and strike up a conversation without coming across weird. You know, like I've been to a lot of like meetup events for foreigners and Japanese people to meet up together. And what ends up happening is there's girls that are interested in foreigners, and then there's foreigners interested in Japanese. But a lot of the foreigners are kind of just really weird and creepy, and like they'll have conversation with these girls, and I'm standing there. It's so awkward because they don't know like how it's so weird. I don't know, like maybe I was this guy at one point too, but like they don't know how to have like a normal conversation with someone about like their interests, and like they'll start talking about maybe where you live, and then they'll just start like keep carrying on about that like for way too long, and like don't know like when to stop or change the subject.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested in hearing about the reverse nampa. When you hit on guys.
That was
Let's
actually,
talk about that.
Yeah, actually I was successful in a way because, and this is actually a cute story. I wish it had worked out just because it would have been a great story to be like, this is how we met. It was actually in Yokohama on Frühlingsfest, as in, it was basically Oktoberfest, but in spring. And I went there with some friends, and in Japan they often have people standing outside the booth or like restaurants where they're kind of handing out flyers, or they're saying like, this is the food we have, come on and eat with us. And there was this one guy working there who had like, was tall and handsome and yet had these puppy eyes, which is like a weird mix, but it's like he was really cute. And I was like, damn, I tapped that. No, but really cute guy. Japanese. And the first time I saw him, I was kind of trying to pass by that point just to kind of take a look at him, and I was trying to work up the courage to kind of say something, because I'm not the type of person who does this usually. I'm not like, but if I see someone I genuinely find attractive, which is not always easy for me to find. I mean, I can see a lot of people are good looking, but I'm not always attracted to them.
Sure.
And but this guy was like, yeah, I like that. And so I was like, should I say something? Shouldn't I? He's working. It's kind of inappropriate. And actually, by the time I worked up the courage, he was gone. He was off his shift. Yeah. But then it was an Frühlingsfest that continued for like a couple of days.
Oh no!
So,
did you stalk him?
no, I mean, a little maybe. No, but like, I didn't. No. Like, it was 2 days later, and I was close by. I was in Tokyo to meet my friend, and then I came back, and I was like, this is the last day of the Frühlingsfest. Maybe he's there. Maybe I should just take a shot. Maybe this is like, I would hate to not know what could have been. You know, even if I get a no.
Sure.
It's not often that I find someone that attractive, and so I went there. He was there working, and which is kind of like, yay, but no, I have to go through with this. And so I went up to him and kind of was asking a little bit about the beer they were selling, and then I was like, yeah, it's fascinating to me because I'm half German, and seeing the Japanese take on the German tradition, kind of trying to sneak in a conversation. And then I was kind of also going to put in, hey, this is super weird, but, and I don't usually do this, but would you like to maybe go to a cafe sometime, like drink some tea? And he was like, oh yeah, definitely, I'm up for it. And then he gave me his Line, which is social media that the Japanese people use. So if you move to Japan, definitely get Line. And so I got his Line, and he actually wrote to me, I think, in the evening, like the same day. And he was really happy about me reaching out to him, because apparently he had also noticed me the first time I saw him.
Hey.
Yes. So, you see, honestly, I think it's like, as a woman, it's really scary to take the first step, because we're like, I think also culturally, biologically, it's usually the guy that takes the first step and does the hunting, so to speak. But I think that a lot of guys, since it doesn't happen a lot to them that they get approached, even though they may be good looking, I think a lot of guys appreciate it. Like, it's a compliment. Even if they turn you down, they will still feel good about it. It's not like they're gonna haha, start laughing at you. And we did go on, I think, a few dates, and he's really nice, and we're friends today actually, but he's a bit young, first of all, to say, like, I mean, he did it as a part-time job, which means that he was a university student, and university students in Japan, they usually are people in Japan, they usually start university right after high school. They don't just work a few years and then decide, they actually just right away, so that they can graduate and get a job immediately as fast as possible. And this is another thing that has to do with Japanese dating, I feel, is that he was pretty quiet. Like, he's really nice, but the conversation didn't always flow. And that's something...
You felt like you were leading the conversation or having to always, like, keep the conversation going?
Yeah, and I was like, is it me? Is it my Japanese that isn't very good? Because this was pretty much like 2 months after I came to Japan.
Okay.
And
the second time, right?
yeah, the second time, like in Yokohama. So I had been like in Yokohama for like 2 months, and I did speak like conversational Japanese. And I was like, is it me? But how come if it's my Japanese that's not so good, that I'm still the one initiating most of the conversations? Shouldn't it be the other way around? And actually, I think now that we have met, like, I mean, we dated for like, I think we went 3 days, then we were silent, and then he contacted me like a year later. And then by that time, he had been in Australia. When we first met, he had never been abroad, like not properly. And then when we met, like, I think, I don't know, a couple of months ago, he had been to Australia, and suddenly it was so much easier to talk to him and have a conversation. And I think it's just having this experience, going abroad, understanding maybe foreigners a little bit better, and having more of something in common to talk about, traveling and so on. It was easier.
Yes, yes, yes. Japanese who have gone abroad, I dare say, are more socially and culturally evolved.
But I've had most of my dates here in Japan with guys, or not most, but like half of them at least, I think, have been a bit difficult simply because I feel like, I don't know, some Japanese people are great with conversation, so I'm not saying that all of them are the same. And like the people at my share house are also so super social and fun, but a lot of the guys I went on a date with were really quiet and didn't have much to say. It was mostly like, oishii ne, you know, the typical commenting on the food and stuff like that. And another thing that Japanese people ask a lot, especially at least guys, is like, are you popular? Have you also gotten that question?
Yeah, girls ask that the question all the time. They'll say, "Motteru desho?"
Yeah.
Like, which is like, you must be so popular, right? And I've talked about this with my other friend in our last video. Go and check it out. But yeah, I've gotten that a lot, and it's kind of frustrating because I've explained this to some girls that have said this, and maybe this might connect with you. I think the reason why they say that, though, is because you are their type. Like, maybe they think that you are very attractive, and so in their minds, maybe they don't have confidence, and so they think, oh, this person must be popular with a lot of people. But they're not able to see it from another perspective. For example, our perspectives, where maybe, you know, we don't have people coming up and hitting on us all the time, and maybe we don't feel like we're popular, and so it's kind of like they're looking up at us too much.
I think how they look at you will also depend on where you're from. For example, this is pretty sad, but I think that, for example, white people are more okay than foreigners from other Asian countries, depending on which Asian country, because especially, I don't know, South Asia or like something.
Like if you're Filipino, or, you know, maybe you're Indonesian or you're from Thailand, like Japanese people can still be kind of racist in that regard.
Yeah, because it's also a lot of like kind of illegal immigration, stuff like that, I think, is what the image is, at least. And actually, I have heard a lot about that it's difficult as a foreign woman to find like Japanese dates, and guys won't like you. And I haven't had that problem. For me, I don't think it's difficult finding a date as a foreign woman, at least a white woman. And I think if you really want a Japanese boyfriend, it shouldn't be a problem. The problem is, are they serious about you? That's for me, at least. I think like I think there are a lot of guys who would be interested in dating foreigners, but then, for example, on the nightclub, one guy like, oh, I love you, like your skin color, and I love like foreign girls, and it's kind of like, okay, so you have a fetish, you know? That's not also what you like, gaijin hunters. So I think if you just want any boyfriend at all, you know, it doesn't matter who, as long as he's Japanese. If you have a Japan fetish, I mean, I'm speaking from a female point of view. I think that's pretty easy, probably. Sure. The problem is really like, is this guy serious about you, or is it more about? And sounds really gross. At least they have this kind of thinking or this expression in Korea, riding the white horse, and it's like the experience of sleeping with a white woman. And I'm not sure if you have the same expression in Japan, but I do think that there is it's a little bit for some Japanese guys, the mentality like, oh yeah, scoring a white chick and so on. Because also I'm in a Facebook group for women in Japan, and one of the girls who is married to a Japanese man, he has been telling that at the work, a lot of his colleagues will be asking questions like, oh, is it different sleeping with a white woman compared to a Japanese girl and so on. So so I do think you can find someone really great here. And but I do think also a little bit that's at least the problem maybe for foreign women, that you don't know if does this guy actually like me, or is it more that he's trying to score a foreign woman.
And that's where communication is super important, and where sometimes guys aren't straightforward with what they're really after, what they want. And so for you as the girl, you need to set that straight away. It's like, if you're gonna go on dates with this person, you need to be able to have the courage and just ask, just be like, you know, what do you want? What are you looking for? And just and set boundaries if that's really important to you. If you're really looking for a serious relationship, then you need to make sure you have boundaries in place so that you're not just falling for anyone who's just silver tongue, someone who's just like good with their words, that can like, you know, convince you and just make you feel like everything's okay.
Yeah.
There needs to be something more deep and tangible that you can hold on to in order to build that trust if what you're really looking for is a relationship.
Yeah. And I think like, don't ignore red flags and go with your gut. I think in my mind I've also had a lot of it, I'm like, oh, but this is a Japanese thing. This is like, for example, this thing where Japanese people can be pretty quiet, and I actually think that is actually part of Japanese culture, because not just me, but a friend of me too has been like, why is there like a Japanese couple sitting there in cafe not saying anything to each other? And I've experienced it too. I've been sitting with my friend at the cafe, next to us on a table, a Japanese couple, they're both sitting on their phone or just staring into space, and I'm like, are they fighting? But then they're kind of doing something with their hair and kind of being a bit lovey-dovey, but like 20 minutes like almost no conversation, and to me it's like, that's wild, that's crazy. But I guess they also have like a lot of non-verbal communication, and I think they're just more comfortable just sitting there not saying anything. For me, I would get bored. That's me, but that's just me as a person too.
And honestly, like that's a very good observation. I've seen that a lot too, and I think that it's actually not good. Like, sure, they may be okay with it, and it may be some like cultural thing where they just don't talk much or whatever, but I have seen so many of my friends in relationships, Japanese, or marriages, where that lack of communication has caused so much problems. It's just, people just aren't communicating enough in Japan, and that's causing problems with relationships just between Japanese people, or especially for us, dating a Japanese person, if they're not good at communicating and expressing their feelings, cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, and I think like I do think that it's part of Japanese culture and so on. Not all of them, but it's that they are maybe more relaxed and with not saying so much. But for me, when I was dating this one guy, the guy I had this half relationship with, at the first date we were talking a lot, and I was actually really impressed that we were able to have like this conversation, and he knew so much about history, which totally like floored me, because he didn't just know about Japanese history but also like German history and things that I wouldn't expect even Europeans to know, unless they're German. But then with every date after that, it just became more stagnant with the conversation, and I was like, oh, this is a Japanese thing. I have been on other dates where guys were really quiet. I mean, the first date I had with this guy I did Nampa on, he was also pretty quiet, and he was a good guy. He was just didn't know what to say. But with this guy that I was half dating, I felt like, oh, but this can't be it. The first date was great. We talked a lot. And so I think I was also willing to ignore, like, just being like, making excuses for it and thinking this is a Japanese thing and it will get better and so on. And so I ignored pretty, like, things that maybe I shouldn't have ignored, for even if this was going to be, even if it was something that's just Japanese and so on.
Yeah.
I should have also been like, this isn't for me. No matter the reason why our relationship is the way it is, the reason why he is the way he is, it doesn't really matter. What matters is, like, does this work or not? And I just, like, I chose to ignore it, I think. And then afterwards I have been on dates where the guy is really social, and I'm like, and it feels open. I'm like, oh, I understand this guy. I'm not into him, but I feel like we have a connection where I don't feel like I'm guessing all the time. I'm not, because that was like the half relationship. I was always guessing, and every time we said bye, I always thought, like, this may be the last time I see him, because I did not know what was going on in his head. And that's not a healthy relationship, because I just felt so insecure in that. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I've dated someone like that too.
Oh, Japanese or?
Japanese girl.
Oh, there you go. But not all of them. Again, I just have to stretch. I don't want to make this a stereotypical thing. I think the share house I live in, my first neighbors, they were a young Japanese couple, and they were so much fun. They were easy to talk to, even for me, like, as a friend, but also their relationship, they were talking a lot, they were fooling around, where they would just chase around each other around the house, which sounds really childish, but it was really amusing to watch. And they were really cool people, and so I don't think that you should make too many excuses based on culture and so on, because
100%. I think honestly what you just explained perfectly explains about just maturity. I think the people in your share house have had so much more of an different experience as far as growing up, and just that kind of, like, there's like this emotional maturity or emotional, like, intelligence almost, where that they're able to act this way or converse this way or express themselves in this way that many other Japanese people don't, because it's just not taught in Japanese culture. And so I think what happens a lot of times is, for young people or even older people as well, is they don't have these experiences, and so they've never really matured in that way, and then it's just kind of a repeating cycle. And then, you know, people just assume, oh, you know, that's just how it is, or it's just the culture or something. And that's not it. It's just, I feel like saying it's because it's Japanese culture is an excuse for a lack of maturity on a lot of people's parts.
I think it's also like, if you like someone, kind of, you just be like, oh, you want to make excuses because you're like, you want to make things, see that it works out. But yeah, I think it has to do also with maturity and so on. In this group that I'm in on Facebook with women, there are so many women that really often, like, this is something that the guy does that I don't really like. Is this a Japanese thing? Is this a cultural thing? And it is difficult because you are, and in some ways it might sound like silly, like, oh, why would you think it's a cultural thing? But it's, you do get really insecure because you come to this brand new country and new culture, and you want to also be able to adapt and understand the other person, right? But I think, like, and I think it's a good thing if you go to another, like, when in Rome, do as the Roman do, right? However, if it's a relationship, I do think that you kind of have to meet each other in the middle, even though you should respect the culture you're coming to. If it's someone that you love and who genuinely loves you, you should be able to meet each other in the middle. And if it's always you just kind of like adapting to the other person, and the other person is just kind of like a certain way and they won't change and so on, then that's not the right person, I think. I think at the very least they should be curious about you and your culture and try to understand you as well.
100% agree with that. Like, at the end of the day, you shouldn't compromise who you are, and that's why it's so important that you need to set boundaries for yourself and know who you are and what you're looking for, and just not compromise from that. And maybe if you're new to the dating scene and you're not really sure what those things are, in that case you just need to go out and date a bunch of different people to figure out what it is that is important to you when it comes to finding someone and finding what you're looking for in a relationship.
Yeah, and I think like my experience wasn't really great. I mean, in some ways I'm glad I had that experience. On the other hand, like in some ways it's like I feel like I know better now. On the other hand, it did kind of dampen my mood a little bit when it comes to dating, and it was a bit difficult for me. And it wasn't even that I really was that crazy about the guy. I don't think I even cried over him. It was more that I was maybe no, really, I was like, oh, I'm not really that sad that he's gone. It was more like the thing that I thought I had found, and then he turned. I really fell in love with the idea of him, like the first date where he seemed to be the way I liked. Like, he had. I felt like he presented himself really differently when I first met him, and then compared to the other. I don't know why that was, but I think a good thumb rule, is that how you say rule of thumb?
Yeah, rule of thumb.
Rule of thumb is like if you're gonna be with someone, you should feel good when you're around that person.
Yes.
And not feel insecure. You should like bring out the best in each other, and the other person should not make you feel less than you are.
And that statement applies not just to relationships, but applies to friendships. It applies to work. It's like if the other person is not making you feel happy and you feel bad about yourself, or there's negativity, like just leave. In that workplace, if you hate your job and it's stressing you out all the time and you don't like it, maybe the environment's good, but like the work is super bad, or maybe the work is good but it's super negative environment. Like, it's just going to take away from your happiness, and at the end of the day, you only live one life. You need to be happy.
Yeah.
And so if maybe it's your environment, maybe you're living somewhere that is stressing you out, you just need to change your environment, change your work, end a relationship, end a friendship, maybe stop talking to your parents. Like
that sounds okay. Well, if they make you feel bad, then yeah, maybe.
If your parents are always being super negative on you and like always causing fights and just making you feel bad, just instead of talking to your parents every day, maybe just talk to them once a week or a couple times a month. Just at the end of the day, you just have to do what you need to do to make you happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Surround yourself with people that are good for you.
Exactly. And I think you found that at your new share house too. And I think you got lucky both in the friends you got to make in Kyoto, as well as the people in your share house. Having a positive and living environment is super important. Super important in just enjoying your life in Japan.
Yeah. I think so too.
Well, man, I feel like that's a good time to give a summary.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like, what advice would you give to other girls that are thinking about dating Japanese guys, or maybe in a relationship with a Japanese guy?
Oh, in a relationship, I would. Oh, you know better than I do. I think okay, it depends. If you're not happy with your relationship, if you feel like your partner makes you feel insecure, maybe you should reconsider the relationship, and if you really want to be in it. I think as for dating, when it comes to Nampa, be careful. Make sure, you only go with a guy and go on a date if you have good vibe. Be careful, also, I think Line is great because then you can also easily block the person if they're scary. It's not like Facebook where you kind of reveal your whole life to the other person.
Yeah.
I think dating, I've mostly been on Tinder. I think I've found most of my dates on Tinder, good and bad ones. And I think online dating is still a pretty new concept to Japanese people, actually. And
it's getting more popular. There's a lot of new sites coming out in Japan where guys have to pay some type of subscription to be able to send messages to girls or to get more likes to like girls. And that can be good and bad, because then it kind of forces guys to invest, whereas Tinder, guys don't have to pay, and then in that way it kind of enforces more just kind of one night stands, because they don't have to do anything, right? But like if you're having to pay in an app, and then I don't know, creates kind of different environment. But that's a whole nother video.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue. Tinder.
I think like I also want to say Tinder in Japan is that a lot of people use Tinder for a variety of reasons. It's not like in the West world where people either use it for sex or for dating, like actual relationships. I feel in Japan they use Tinder to find models. They find Tinder to find people like hair models to kind of cut on for like their graduation if they're hairdressers. They look for English teachers on Tinder, like someone just to talk to or just friends. Like I've seen a lot of guys being like, I'm not gay, I'm just looking for friends, for foreign friends to talk to. So my advice would be, again, learn some Japanese, because if you go on Tinder, you can't expect people to speak English.
Yep. And fun fact, Tinder originally failed in Japan.
Oh.
And they had to change their marketing to Japanese about it being a social platform.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many people who don't know that when foreigner guys use it, they're kind of more looking just for hookups.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, I thought we were going to be English exchange partners.
Yeah, a little bit like I haven't had too many of the language exchange partner thing, but I have had guys being like, and that's no matter what country, like, hey, I want to have sex, and it's like, okay, move on, your princess is in another castle. Although I have to say, I respect guys that tell me right off the bat what their intentions are, because then they're not wasting my or their own time.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, my advice: go on Tinder if you really want to date guys. Talk to them a little bit. If you know some Japanese, that's really great, and go with your gut feeling. Don't make excuses if there are things that make you feel bad. Communication is important, and don't lower your standards too much, really. Like, find compromises are great, but the compromise should not like mean that you get a lower self-esteem, or that you accept things that you would never accept in your own country.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, go with your gut. I think that was more like my boobs, actually.
Yeah, I know. I was like, it's a little high.
Here, my gut is here. It wasn't on camera. No one would see. Okay. Or
Go with your gut.
on your heart. That's more okay. Here.
Follow your heart.
Follow your heart.
Follow your heart.
And your gut. And your brain.
Because the reason why we have that expression, follow your gut, is because the gut feeling comes from past experiences of things that you've heard, that you've read, or that you've experienced personally, and that maybe you can't explain logically in your mind or out loud. You just have that feeling that you know.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we have that feeling, and it really helps people, not just in relationships, but it can also help in business or wherever, in just protecting ourselves or helping us make better decisions.
It's better to follow your guts than your heart, I think, because your heart sometimes be like, he might change.
Trick you, right? Yeah.
Don't try to change anyone, by the way. They won't change. Not really.
But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sure that was super helpful. If you would like to learn more and follow her and see what she's up to, where can they do that?
Well, I mean, it's not so much what I'm up to, I guess, but it's I'm a webcomic artist, and if you like some high school friendship romance with BL, then check out my comic Idiots Don't Catch Colds, and you can find it on Webtoons or Tapastic. And yeah, that's my work, and if you want to check it out, I would be happy. No pressure.
Link is in the description.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. I hope you guys learned something, and if you have any questions, leave the comments below, and either I or maybe her will answer them best we can.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for coming. Talk to you guys later, and have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.